All right, my friends, thank you for being such troopers and coming out at this very late hour. I realize I have to be back up for 6:45 a.m. Shacharis tomorrow, so let's get going. And I'll try not to do as much of my banter as usual. That way, I get us out at a reasonable time. Speaking of time, Zmanim. That's right. This is part two of our Zmanim series. Previously, we talked about Zmanim that were related to the morning. When to put on talis and tefillin, how does daylight savings time affect that? Thank you, Mayor, for sharing with me a wonderful book that kind of goes through the broader culture and historical issues, not just the Jewish ones. It was very enlightening. Now we're going to jump to the end of the day. You might be wondering, why is it like that we daven Marv at one time, we end Shabbos at another time? I go on my Zmanim, which is a website, as the name would suggest. It is a website for Zmanim. And whenever a fast day ends, it says, well, according to Rav Tukachinsky, this, and Ramosha, maybe that. And then Ramosha said, but really, you should do this time, which is just a few minutes later than that. What is going on over here? So I can't claim, don't worry, Rabbi Wiener, I'm just giving the general introduction right now. I can't claim that we're going to cover all the intricacies of Zmanim this evening, but let me give a few basics to start us off. So, determining when nightfall is, let me put it to you, my esteemed friends. What is that important for? Why do I need to know the precise time for when nightfall occurs? And by the way, I should already introduce a few terms that I'm going to use ad nauseum. So, if you need to, just jot it down. Shkia, which is sunset. Tzeis HaKochavim, which is nightfall. Now, those are the two main terms. And between Shkia and Tzeis HaKochavim is what we call Bein Hashmashos. We got someone at the door over there. I'm buzzing. There you go. Welcome. Is Bein Hashmashos, which is twilight. So very good. I know the sun sets at a certain point, and I know it gets really dark at a certain point. But and I know that there's this twilight. And as the name suggests, we don't know whether it's day or night. It is a categorical suffix. It's categorically a doubt whether it's day or night. We are not solving that. That is just left open in halacha. It's suffix yom, suffix laila, we call it. Doubt whether it's a day or maybe it's night. Now, what areas of halacha do we need to know with precision when it is nighttime? Shabbos, excellent, Marsha. Every single week we need to know for Shabbos. What about on a day-to-day basis? Mincha, well, right, because Mincha we will end with Shkia usually, and right, by definition, Marv as well. Very good for Shema. Even though we are makel to daven Marv after Shkia, we have to then repeat Kriya Shema after Tzeis HaKochavim because it's a biblical mitzvah. We got to get this done right. Okay, good. Those are some of the more, regular things we're used to. Who give me some other things? Mikvah, very good again. And a woman doing a Vedika check as well. For mikvah, it's important to know because she goes right at the nighttime. So when is the seventh day, or well, really 12 days, when does it terminate? Excellent. Mikvah is another example. Very good. Fast days also. That's also going to be covered in this tshuva.
Well, Yom Kippur, we start early and finish.
Because we have something called Tosefes Shabbos and Tosefes Yantif that we have to add on a little bit before and add on a little bit after. But even absent those additions, that's right. We started with Shkia and we ended with Tzeis HaKochavim. But when is Tzeis HaKochavim? So, my friends, there's basically three.
Yeah, like a
what?
Birthday. It's one of the.
Okay, good. And also when someone dies, right? For Avelis for mourning as well. So Ramosha, so here's our plan basically. We're going to start basically my goal is very simple for this evening. Usually when we get together, I first teach the tshuva, and then I bring in the different tshuvas, and then all the fancy stuff, and then who disagrees, and then some cool things that I found in some other books. All the cool stuff and the supplements are for next year. This year I have a very modest goal. Ramosha Feinstein is on page 3 in the 4th volume of Orach Chaim Samach Beis, wrote what is his perhaps the most essential tshuva on Zmanim, at least the back end of Zmanim at the end of the day. This is the tshuva that we look at. There are other tshuvas that we'll see that kind of orbit around it, but this is where he spells out his whole theory of Zmanim. And, you might be wondering, well, why do I care about Ramosha Feinstein? Why can't I get this from some other sefer? He's got a revolutionary approach to Zmanim. he always has a revolutionary approach. That's what makes him fun.
Nobody else agreed with him before that?
It doesn't mean no one else agreed with him, but it means that no one probably formulated it the way. You know what? I'll let you be the judge of it. So so basically there's two parts of the tshuva. There's the conceptual where he spells out his approach, his theory, and then the second part of the tshuva is where he basically applies it to all the scenarios that we discussed. So once we get the conceptual underpinnings, we can then it's not as simple as just plugging into place, but if we get the principles clear, the application will be that much easier. So here we go. Oh yes.
Is there any relevance? Would there be any relevance in Templeton in the Beit HaMikdash about when the?
Well, yeah, because the carbon tummy and the final fats and everything. The innards have to be brought on the mizbeach before the end of the day, and that actually gets the debate between Rabban and Rabbi Yehuda about whether we mark it off with plag or with we're getting really fancy here, plag or shkia, which is relevant for our shul because we daven mincha mariv at what we call the plag time, which it's basically halfway. I'm going to throw too many. This is an open parenthesis, so whatever you get, whatever not, that's not relevant. But basically, if mincha katana is the second round of time for mincha, I think it's about 9.5 hours into the day, and then basically halfway between mincha katana and shkia is plag, which literally means half. Is plag hamincha, and Rabbi Huda says you could daven mincha before plag, and then we're kind of makel to use into daven marv afterwards. Okay, end parentheses. Good. All right. There are three main statements in the sages, in rabbinic literature, that seem to give us information as to when is nighttime. And the problem is, they at best don't easily cohere, but at worst, they seem to contradict each other. Three statements. One is perhaps the most iconic one. When is nightfall? When there are 3 stars out in the sky. We assume 3 medium stars, but then we got careful because I don't know about you, I can't tell the difference between a medium and a small star. So we say 3 small stars to be safe. Okay, that's the one that it's literally called Seis HaKochavim, right? It's called when the stars come out. Looks like Toby just joined. Welcome, Toby. So that's statement number 1. Statement number 2 is that, okay, this is a lot of concepts here. So if anyone needs to, honestly, I'll just show you. Look at my sheet over here. See all those annotations. In case you want to know what I was doing during the Federation meeting, don't tell them. These are all my annotations. And then I have more annotations over here. So if you need to take notes, just like I'm telling you, like I have to write notes myself. So anyone needs a pen, there you are. So statement number 2. So there's a measurement called a mil in halacha. Mil gets used a lot. Let's assume for now a measure of the mil is 18 minutes. Even though he's going to point out it could be 22, it could be 24. So we are told that the time for Bein Hashmashos, according to one Gemara, but the time for Bein Hashmashos for twilight is 3/4 of a mil. Now, what's 3/4 of 18? 13.5. Yeah, did I get that right?
I didn't.
3/4 of 18 minutes.
Well, yeah.
13.5. Okay, good. I mean, I just read was kind of in the Svarim that told me that. But yes, that's how the math seems to work out. So according to one shita, which we call the shita of the Gra, and kind of like a lot of even before the Gra, people kind of the Gaonim really went with this. That's just 13.5 minutes. So if you ever heard me during Shal Shudas and you said, oh, wait a minute, I didn't wash and I couldn't, that's another application. I didn't get to wash yet in order to eat, it's already Shkia. So sometimes that 13.5 minutes becomes the grace period because that's what we consider normatively be the shortest kind of Bein Hashmashos. But then there's so key terms for the evening. Shkia is sunset, Bein Hashmashos is twilight, and Seis HaKochavim is nightfall when the stars come out. Those are the 3 key terms of the evening. All right. So I will try to translate them each time, but it's worth jotting down if you're able to, because it'll come up over and over again. So those are our 3 terms for the evening. So then the third statement, there's a suggestion which seems to say that there's actually 4. All right. So 1 mil times 4, we get 4 mil. So 4 which would then, if you do the math, if you assume it's 18. So you ever hear people say, I keep Rabbeinu Tam? And how much is that? There you go. It's based on that. But the thing is, for Rabbeinu Tam,
What's
he-
Rabbeinu Tam?
so he's a rabbi.
Okay.
He was our teacher, Tom, not Tom. So Rabbeinu Tam, who was a medieval, one of the Tosafos, one of the medieval scholars. So he held that basically, and this is where I had to start doing the math over here. I really, I wish I had like a board over here. It would be very helpful. But well, I need a whiteboard. I need a whiteboard. I need a whiteboard where. Does anyone have a clean piece of paper or just like a big piece of paper I could hold up for? All right, so just we'll do our best to imagine this. So you got 72 minutes, right? So again, the first 13 and a half minutes of those 72, according to the Gaonim, like the rabbis who even preceded Rabbeinu Tam and many others, majority opinion is in those 13 and a half minutes, it's already nighttime. Then
Which minutes?
What?
Which minutes?
Pashkia, 13 and a half minutes. The initial shkia, when the sun actually
Which
begins.
minutes?
What do you mean?
Minutes
When
on my
you start
watch?
counting the 13 minutes.
Oh, yeah. So we're okay, good. So we're going to talk about fixed minutes. That's we're going to get there. Good. Right now, Rabbi Wiener is pointing out we are working on the assumption of what we call fixed minutes.
That's how it shows it on the.
I got the Zmanim map. 72 minutes fixed, 72 minutes proportional, 72 minutes proportional to right set, 72 minutes. Yes, except the point is basically like every rabbi and his bubby had an idea of how to calculate Zmanim. If you could think of some sort of like reasonable suggestion, it's on here basically. So I am not going to claim to be an expert in Zmanim. I'm going to try to give enough. I tried to research enough information that I can quasi-intelligently convey all this, but numbers is not my forte. So I'll just put that out there. But basically for Rabbeinu Tam, if we go 13.5 plus 45, so basically once you get to the last 13 and a half minutes of those 72, so that's already what's 72 minus 13.5. I don't know the answer, so calculate that. 58.5. Okay, so once we're 58.5 minutes in, then the next shkia begins, and this is the true shkia of Rabbeinu Tam, when it actually becomes twilight. Like what we would say, we don't know if it's day, we don't know if it's night. So those 13 and a half minutes at the end of the 72 is what Rabbeinu Tam treats as what we call Safek Yom, Safek Laila. We don't know if it's day, we don't know if it's night.
Start counting those 72 minutes.
So the same place, when the sun begins to set, then begins the 72-minute count.
Once you pass noon, the sun is setting.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it goes below the horizon. When it starts
When
going,
when the bottom of the.
when the sun
Well, for the top-
begins to start going below.
Or disappear.
When it hits the horizon,
Okay.
that's when it begins. But there's a similar discussion.
That's agreed. Everybody agrees that.
I'm pretty sure, but I always hate to say I fully. Well, I should say there is. I don't know if I think he mentions it here. There is an opinion of the Yereim, which is another rabbi, who says that basically the 13 and a half minutes precede Shkia. When we talk about 13 and a half minutes. So this is why I want to keep this as streamlined as possible, because we need this background information. Now you know why I said if we just get through this tshuva tonight, Dayenu. I'm not even joking. Like I had to sit down for a while and crank my head over this one. And I still sometimes, every time I read through it, I doubt if I fully comprehend it. But I will try my best, my friends.
So Jewish time.
Yeah, Jewish time. Exactly. There we go. And that's, you see, that's why the meeting is still going on over there right now. And I had to leave in the middle. Anyway, okay. Let's look with that background information. I'll try to remind ourselves of these ideas as we go through. So this tshuva is written in 1978, and it's written to Chasni Aovi Kibni Harava Gon Moshe David Ben Mechosni Ahuva Gon Rav Yisrael Isaac Tendler Shlita. Now it's Zichron Levracha. So it's written to my Rebbe Rav Tendler. Right, his name comes up quite a number of times in the tshuvos. I should point out, I only noticed after I put this on the source sheet. If you look at the date, it's in Shvat Tafshin Lamed Tes. Now, if you remember, if you just glance at page 1 in the packet again, remember we had that tshuva about the tefillin Zmanim, about, right? We did that last time. So that also, sorry, not page 1, page 2, Osei. That's also written to Rav Tendler in Rosh Chodesh Adar, Tavshin Lamed Tes. So there's not a lot of time in between these two teshuvos. They're in the same, within the same year, just a few months apart. So my theory is that it's the same author, and he gets the responses around the same time. I would imagine Rav Tendler had a series of Zmanim-oriented questions that he sent to his father-in-law, and his father-in-law, over the course of time, addressed those Zmanim questions. That is my guess. It could be true. It might not be true. The chuvos and the integrity of what's written in there stands all the same. But that was just like a little thing that kind of like poked out to me as I was looking between both pages, because they are actually, right, they are in the same volume of Orach Chaim, but they're many simanim apart. But anyway, that gets into a little editing question. All right. Ramosha says, there have been debates about Zmanim going back to medieval times. Who are we to say who is right on this? Like, I think Rabbeinu Tam is right. I think Rabbeinu Tam is wrong. Even though there are questions raised on each opinion that we just discussed, nonetheless, we should err on the side of caution vis-a-vis the time for sunset and vis-a-vis the time for nightfall. We're going to go stringently in both directions. We're going to, depending on what we're holding. So here's the example he's going to give in a moment. So for Shabbos, maybe we should say at the beginning of Shabbos, we should already consider it to be night 13 and a half minutes in, and we're going to wait 72 minutes, arguably, until Shabbos is completely out. That way, we take the Gaonim on a 13 and a half minutes stringently going into Shabbos, and we take the more expansive version, so we wait longer going out of Shabbos. And he says, V'kol shekain sheyesh lisnai kain bekan America. Certainly here in America, where we're all immigrants coming from Europe and other countries, it certainly makes sense. So everyone's coming from all these different communities. It's a melting pot here in New York, and he'll mention New Jersey soon. Now, even though there's no issue of lo siskodedu, lo siskodedu is another key. Well, you could remember it, but you don't have to remember it for this year. It means, our sages said, lo sasu agudos. Do not make multiple congregations. It can be used against breakaway minyanim, but basically it shouldn't look like we're worshiping two different Torahs. So this is basically a principle in the Talmud for halachic conformity. This is the idea, by the way, that if you go to Yeshiva Shul on Chol HaMoed, you'll see that in the men's section, probably, there'll be men who are not wearing tefillin, and in the women's section, there will just be men, again, but they are wearing tefillin. So I had this question during COVID, because when I went to my hometown at the Igros Yisrael there, so during COVID, those men who were not wearing masks were in the men's section, and this during the week, so the women didn't come during the week there. So the men who wanted to wear masks, I was one of them, I was in the women's section. So then I wasn't sure what they do on Chol HaMoed, because then they have to have like a little Punnett square of like, what if I am a man who wears tefillin but does not wear a mask? And what if I wear a mask, but I'm not sure what they, and like, what if you're like egalitarians, and then you have like a woman who wears tefillin but no mask on? No, she probably would wear a mask, but anyway, you get it. Like, ain l'davar sof at that point. So I'm not really sure what you would. That's probably the shuls where the women are wearing tefillin, they're not worried about lo siskodedu for Chol HaMoed, I would imagine. They got bigger lo siskodedu issues. But when we talk about Ramosha Feinstein and feminism, which he has a tshuva on, we'll save it for that discussion. I said I'll try not to banter and go off the rails on a crazy train tonight. Okay, so then he says, if we look at the top of the next column, He writes, "V'yesh af in the bold. V'yesh af you eitzel tamid chachamim dinazo shel shaychi liyane hora." So he says, and even like the rabbis in this country are not good. Can't even ask some basic questions, and certainly not tough questions related to Zmanim. And I was like reading this, I'm like, oh boy, he's talking about people like me. They're actually, he has in another tshuva. It's one of my favorite throwaway lines in all of Igros Moshe. Not to say I've been through all of Igros Moshe, but I've read a few tshuvas here and there. So it's a tshuva about whether you could give a Dvar Torah between aliyahs on Shabbos morning, what we call being gavra legavra. So the thing is, one's not supposed to talk during Torah reading. I try my best to keep to that. But there's even a question about talking in between aliyahs of Torah reading. So, yeah.
There's some very, very good rabbis who explain the Torah reading.
Very good.
It's not exactly conversation.
Very exposition, right? That's very good. So he deals with that in the tshuva. But then, after making precisely your point, he turns around and says, but this is only if the rabbi is actually expositing Torah. But unlike the young whippersnapper rabbis today, that their sermons are lo shaychi le Torah klal, that the most of it is not even Torah content in the first place. They're just talking about classic rock or the news or what they read in the New York Times that day. There's like no Torah content in them. So if there's no Torah content, then what's it doing in middle of Torah reading? So that's where he takes a jab at the young rabbis of his day, which okay. Yeah, I mean there's some truth to it also. Okay. So is it ageist if it's to young people or? Oh, I thought it was only, okay, fine. I'll take it. I'll take what protections I can. I don't get a lot of different racial profile protection, so I'll take what I can. Okay, wonderful. So moving forward, after castigating and bemoaning the impoverishedness of that's not a word, but the terrible nature of the lack of Torah knowledge in America, which he throws into tshuvas here and there, he says, okay, let's get to work over here. He says in the next paragraph, remember, there's a principle called Tosefes Shabbos. We add on a little bit before, we don't wait till the very last minute or second, but we add on a couple of minutes before sunset to Shabbos. And then he points out, you ever wonder what's his deal with lighting 18 minutes before candle lighting? Where do we get this idea from? So if you remember, there's the opinion of, what was that? So, sorry, right. Candle lighting being 18 minutes before Shkia. So the Shitas HaYereim, which we talked about before, the opinion of the Yereim, Shahagimel Rivai Mil, the 3/4 of a mil, the 13.5 minutes that the Gemara talks about, who kodem haschalas hashkia, is actually before Shkia. Those 13.5 minutes we got to be careful about. And so basically the 13.5 minutes got inflated to 18 minutes, and then the 18 minutes in many places became 20 minutes, which I think is the minhag in Yerushalayim, or is it 40? They do 40 minutes or 20? You were just there in Eretz Yisrael by Wiener. What do they do?
I think it's 40.
40 minutes.
40.
Okay. So they do a whopping 40 minutes in Yerushalayim. But then if we look in the next paragraph, Ubematzei Shabbos, Sarek lahamtin ad ayin beis minutin. You have to wait 72 minutes after Shkia. And depending on what you hold, remember, where do we get the 72-minute calculation from?
The sun hitting the water.
Sun. Oh, yeah, you're right, from Shkia. But how do we get to 72 minutes? Because it's made up of, there's 4 mil in there. And each mil is 18 minutes. It's 18 times 4. What if I told you there's a sheet that is an opinion says a mil could be 22 minutes and even a whopping 24 minutes. So that could get you apparently to 96 minuten. Get you to a whopping 96 minutes. Imagine, like Shabbos, basically, you just like, forget, I'm just going to sleep at this point. I'm not going to wait till Shabbos is over.
What are the 3 different shurim that you brought?
So either 18 minutes for a mil,
Yeah.
22 minutes, or 24 minutes. And then you have to multiply by 4. So apparently if you multiply 24 by 4, it gets to 96.
So what you're saying?
That math work out? Okay, that's what he's saying.
Starts Thursday afternoon at 3 o'clock.
So
This is after.
this is for after Shabbos. Yeah, it's for after Shabbos.
So Shabbos ends Tuesday afternoon at 3 o'clock.
Pretty much at that point, right?
Dollar until that time.
What?
Maybe that's why you can make a dollar until Tuesday.
Oh yeah, pretty much. Yeah, I guess once you're going there. Okay, so here, everything I said until now is what we call the fixed minutes, the fixed 72 minutes. But then this is where we get fancy. This is where the tshuva gets revolutionary, if we might say. In the next paragraph, he says that actually the Gra, the Vilna Gaon, so one of the from a few hundred years ago, one of the major luminaries of Judaism, said as follows. I never have good instructions. They're just big, insert big rabbi. Basically, they're big rabbis. We could talk about his opposition to Hasidim and all that, but that's for another class. We did talk about Hasidim a little bit in this series already. So the Vilna Gaon actually held that the minutes are location dependent. They're not fixed 72 minutes. A mill is not fixed at 18 minutes. And this is true, bein l'kula, bein l'chumra, whether it serves us leniently or stringently. And what Ramosha says actually is, l'chein, b'po America, b'yireinu New York, v'chein b'New Jersey. Dalad Zion Vav Yud Reish Zion Yud is Jersey. Yeah, New Jersey. Right, because there's no J to really use. So Dalad Zion. So in New York, New Jersey, and all the places that people go up for the summer to the mountains, where he says I've been personally. They had I think they called it Camp Staten Island or something like that, or because Yeshiva Staten Island, which is founded by his son Reb Ruvain Shlita, then went up to a summer camp. Yeshivas basically do this, where they'll have a summer camp that you go to in the mountains in New York, the Catskills, for another month. So basically, they're still learning, but it's a little bit lighter. There's a little bit more time for sports. It's a nicer environment. So when we went on a family vacation during the summer a few months ago, I told you we had one of those camps across the street from us, Camp Torah's Chesed, it was called. And all the kids were already gone, and some of the staff and people came up for the weekend, and we got the Chapa Minyan over there. And I was worried because they have an air, but there's no air in our Airbnb. So, but when I got there, the base medrash it was a summer base medrash, and it was stocked better than most batei midrashim that I go around seeing anywhere. So it was great. And like my brother-in-laws were complaining that the davening was over 3 hours, and I used to complain about these things. But then I realized, wait, I don't have to sit in front of the room and be, I love doing all my stuff that I do in front of the room. But every now and then it's nice to just bring like a stack of svarim, sit in the back, and just like I could do it, I could just I'll clap al chait for it, but basically I just got to keep learning and reading and everything. And I was actually reading up in Zmanim during that time, by the way. So I was researching this class during that time. So it's the fruits of that. Yeah.
No, but back to the issue of the time, the minutes not being standard. So I remember when I was sixth grader, I had a Rebbe who always, every Friday, we would sit and calculate the Zmanim.
Oh boy.
So because what you do is you look from when the sun rises until it sets.
Well,
but
you see, but even there we have a debate. Do you count it from Alos HaShachar, when the first crack of dawn, or do you do it from the sun's orb, Netzacham actually begins to rise?
The point was, though, that an hour is not an hour. So we refer to it as a Zmanim.
Yes, they're relative.
But it's very short on days where you don't have as much sunlight.
You see, we knew time was relative before Einstein came along.
I also went
brain twisted in the sixth grade.
I also went to to a lecture in the OU I forget what it's called, something out Avram, the old OU headquarters in Jerusalem, and the guy said, really, Shabbos starts in different places in Jerusalem because of the mountains.
Yes, that's the question. That's it. You see, this is why I said the whole Zmanim Sugya is like any detail has a sub machlokis within their sub debate. So right, do you imagine that you're like on the horizon, like you could see the horizon clearly, or is it based on where you could see it from your point of elevation? So that's the thing. That's why Bob was showing me before. You go on my Zmanim, and it's just and then how many degrees, and this, so it's mind bending. It's mind bending. Oh yeah, watch that one. Yeah.
Rabbis Keeps looking down to the mountain to see if the sun has gone down. fast.
That was a funny movie. I want to see more Jewish. Right? Anyone watch the sitcom The Goldbergs or?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So-
No one.
there was an original one. Oh, sorry. No, this is like 2000s, 2000. Oh yeah. Oh, okay. I like seeing Jewish representation. Anyway, I promised everyone came out late tonight. I wasn't going to banter too much. My apologies.
I'm sorry, you have the wrong crowd.
Oh no, well, I'm glad everyone's enjoying themselves. Toby, Rabbi Wiener, how you guys you guys hanging in there? Okay. All right. So let's go. Okay, but let me spell this out. So he says, here's the punchline. Asher kichamishim minute acher shkia kvar kol hashemayim meleim kochavim v'chosha ki be'emtza halayla. So he says 72 minutes back in Europe is the equivalent of 50 minutes in New York, New Jersey area. That is just, he says, it's just as dark.
No, it's not, no, it has to do also with the latitude. So like if you go to Scotland in the summertime or North or Canada, Shabbos, it doesn't get dark until 11:30. And that's a lot further north.
I was I was a rabbi for a summer travel program, and we went to Calgary and we went up to the Canada, and it was Shabbos ended at 11 something, but some places it almost never ends. So
Yeah, it does.
yeah, you get that big. I can imagine some Hasidic Rebbe says, "Oh, he wanted to travel to a special place in the world where you know the holiness of Shabbos never ends." I can imagine so certain.
We're talking about that, the idea of that myth. That measurement, that's a medieval thing, or is that a Gemara thing?
So it's
Relative to-
Rabbeinu Tam says it based on the mill exists in the Gemara, but then it gets debated later as to how to measure like what the quantification of a mill is.
But is it based on some kind of meteorological?
It's not for you, how long it takes you to walk.
Mill
Right,
is a
right,
walking-
yeah, sorry, you're right. That's correct. It
Mill
is
is a walking
sorry,
measure.
Bob is correct. It's a distance it takes. So, and that's why, by the way, when we do the minyan sugya, when we do his chuvos about tefillah b'tzibur, davening with a minyan, so that in the Gemara also the halacha is that you travel an additional 4 mil to get to your location, if there's a minyan there, or 1 mil out of your way. So that is a distance. But then the question is, how long does it take to walk that mil? So that's that's where it gets unclear. You know, like I Google mapped how long does it take for me to walk from the lakes to shul over here, and it said like nearly 20 minutes. I'm like, well, depends. Am I walking with Talia, or am I going by myself? You know, it's a 5-minute difference between the two of those, if not more.
But I mean, I would say that those measurements are relative to kind of what they were observing.
Okay, so this right, and this is the point I want to get to. So let me just lay out again the 72-minute breakdown, and then that way we can appreciate what Ramosha's doing over here. Originally, we thought that we're working with a mill, fixed 18 minutes, times 4, 72 minutes. So the Goanim basically hold for the first 13.5 minutes, which is 3/4 of 1 mil, after sunset, after Shkia, it is now nighttime for all halachic purposes. But then we add on another 45 minutes. I think we said that gets us to 58.5. And then begins what we call, for Rabbeinu Tam, he invented a second Shkia, which basically, at that point, the last 13.5 minutes of the 72 after sunset, then for him is what we call halachic twilight. Maybe day, maybe night. But in Rav Moshe's construct, actually the full range is really 50 minutes. So, and then what happens is, that means everything, like you're talking about before, Mayor Zmanim, has to be constricted down relative to that. So I ran a calculation myself, or Moshe describes in the tshuva, but I just did it a little slightly differently. So 4 mil now equal, it's like algebra here. 4 mil is going to be 50 minutes. So we know there's four. So how much is 1 mil? 50 divided by 4,
12.5.
right? Around 12 and a half. And then 1/4 of 12 and a half is a little over 9 minutes, right?
A quarter of?
Sorry, 3/4. 3/4.
Yeah.
3/4. It's
Almost that.
almost 9 point, right? So 9 and a little bit, he says. He says, Tisha minute harishonim v'yoser ma'at, right? So a little bit over 9 minutes. So here we go. So 3/4 of 1 mil now is no longer 13.5 minutes. It's now going to be 9 and a little bit, which then the next plus 31 minutes or so. And that means for Rabbeinu Tam, also the last 3/4 of a mil of 9 point 33 whatever minutes is going to be basically for him Shkia. So
Can they measure time that well?
well, this is the general question about, how are we too precise with our timing these days? This is the question about it because
Open-ended.
right. So the way the Zmanim and other folks figured out what Ramosh is doing is basically when the sun is 8.5 degrees under the horizon, that's apparently when you hit that time. So you just basically they retrofit Rav Moshe's Shita to like other locations. Basically, 50 minutes or so is 8.5 degrees under the horizon. So now Rav Moshe basically just holds when the sun, and that's the same 8.5 degrees in Europe yields around 72 minutes. So that's why when you go on my Zmanim, it says 8.5 degrees. I think what they did was they kind of retrofitted Rav Moshe in this tshuva. Rav Moshe doesn't say the words 8.5 degrees, but I think they retrofitted. They basically, I told you this was confusing for me also, but they basically said, Rav Moshe said that 50 minutes in New York is like 72 minutes in Europe, wherever in Europe it might be. There's a place in Europe, in Eastern Europe, I guess. So that, what?
Latvia.
Okay, Latvia, sure, why not? Transylvania. I wonder if like, I just wonder Transylvania, if Dracula has to calculate the Zmanim for when is nighttime. Oh, this is a good question. This is a good question. Like if you're a vampire, right? How do you calculate the Zmanim? All right, because if you're out during the day, then you can't be out during the day, right? So what happens? Does he go according to the twilight of Rabbeinu Tam, or is he Saimech on the Gonim?
That's where Darwin comes in. The ones who go to the wrong post say die. So you don't have that. So you just
that'd be a great way to test this theory, Okay.
But the Gemara and the Gonim were basically working out of left.
Yeah.
They were working around that geographic region where a mill might have had a meaning to them.
Okay, that's fair. That's fair. Now, here's the thing. Let me just get to this point. If you go to the next page, so this is page 4, top right column. So he says, "Ulfizeh yesh lahatir b'motzei Shabbos la'acher 50 minutes." So Moshe says we wait 50 minutes to end Shabbos. Now, the truth is, he says, really, it depends on the time of year. It could basically, for Rav Moshe's purposes, it could range between 41 to 50 minutes, depending how close or far you are from the equinox and solstice. But basically, the range in New Jersey, New York, he says, is 41 to 50 minutes. So I set our Zmanim for the shul based on that, 8.5 degrees. So it will vary somewhere between 41 to 50 minutes. I know we're in Pennsylvania, but I think we're kind of still within that relative range that he was describing. We're only a few exits away from New Jersey, right? I try not to think about that too much. I try Pennsylvania, right? But then here's the thing. You ever have a yeshiva bacher and he might say, I hold of Rabbeinu Tam. Right? You ever hear someone say, I hold Rabbeinu Tam, they wait 72 minutes? This is what's remarkable about Rav Moshe's approach. Did you know that each and every one of us holds Rabbeinu Tam? He just argues that if we go with Rabbeinu Tam, not understanding him as fixed minutes, but as relative to the location, Rabbeinu Tam's 72 minutes in Europe would just be 50 minutes here in New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania. So it's not that he says, remember at the beginning of the tshuva, he said, we can't rely on the Gaonim. We can't rely on 13.5 minutes, even fixed minutes will not be sufficient because at the end of Shabbos, we're dealing with an Isser Malacha. We're dealing with a potential biblical transgression of that's in theory, back in the good old days, could be liable to the death penalty. So we actually, remember, he says at the beginning of the tshuva, we all hold by Rabbeinu Tam. It's just as simply a matter of do we go Rabbeinu Tam fixed minutes of 72 or relative minutes, which yields 50 minutes or less.
Lighting system.
Yeah, what's their system?
whatever they say is when I should light, and whenever they say Shabbos ends, that's when it ends.
Okay, I'm sure they get it from somewhere also.
They said it for Allentown and it
We
works.
have it on the back of the shul.
Right, there's
telephone
that too,
directory.
but I don't always
That's
have
what
that
I
in my
use.
hand.
Okay,
Um,
I'm sure they are. I'm sure they have a legitimate calculation as well.
Get another,
and
get another copy.
As I said, every rabbi and his bubby has an opinion on this. So I mean, you're probably following somebody.
yeah,
I don't understand why a European and American are different. 72 versus
I don't think it's fundamentally Europe versus America. I mean, because different parts of America will have different calculations. He's talking anecdotally. He said, I come from Eastern Europe / Russia, where I observed that it took 72 minutes to get a certain degree of darkness in the sky, absolute nightfall. And now I'm living in New York.
So just if you look at a globe, you will see that New York is on the same latitude as Rome.
Yeah.
Think about it. It's
yeah.
Rome. So now you're saying go
So-
further north, it gets dark much
Okay, so
later.
he's thinking that European, he's thinking latitude.
Yeah. it's so
He's in Luban, which is kind of modern day Belarus, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, so he's
Think of the
north,
map, he's
north.
well
Yeah.
above.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't think he means all Europe and Germany and France and Spain are all the same. I think he's saying is where I was in Europe. He's speaking anecdotally
Oh,
right now.
okay.
In our next year, we're going to see someone who speaks anecdotally about an observation he made on Ellis Island, coming in as a fresh Jewish immigrant. So I was going to say that for next, we'll see it next time. But let me just wrap up because I want to make sure we bring this home. So Ramosha does actually recommend that B'nai Torah v'yirei Hashem yisparach, which basically I'll translate as like God-fearing people who like to get the premium level, right? So if you're the guy who like gets the super duper deluxe package for your Arba Minim before species, it's like that's what he's talking about over here. So he says you should wait 72 minutes. Why? Because that's what they did back in Europe. When we talk about minhagim, about customs, I'm going to make an argument that Ramosha, coming off the boat as a fresh, immigrant to the United States, he saw. Remember, he laments how people are not keeping them in Hagim, and he laments that. So he says, keep the 72 minutes, not because you have to, but because that's what previous generations did. And I think he saw kind of observance slipping away in front of his eyes. So anything we could do to preserve the minhagim of old, even if there's no halachic obligation to do it, he saw a value in doing that. I have other chuvos that prove that. Tefillin Rabbeinu Tam, others will get there. Okay, here we go. Application time. All right. So remember at the beginning of the class, we raised a number of scenarios where knowing when nighttime is very essential. And now you see what I put on here is already long, and I cut out like some of the middle of the tshuva over here. But I'm just going to give you a few rapid fire ones. I think he talks about Hanukkah lighting as well. Okay. First, there is Shabbos. He says, basically, during twilight, one is not allowed to do malacha. One's not allowed to basically do any of the 39 things you can't do on Shabbos. However, one can instruct a non-Jew to do something for them during twilight. But wait, we just learned all these different opinions about twilight. Which twilight? So he says, you know what? You could go all the way up till 40 minutes after Shkia. Why? Because 40 minutes after Shkia, roughly, we can rely on Rabbeinu Tam. Because for Rabbeinu Tam, it's still daytime. So he actually uses Rabbeinu Tam leniently in this respect because we're not dealing with an actual transgression of Shabbos. We're dealing with something that's only rabbinically prohibited. And something rabbinically prohibited gives us more leeway to rely on a minority opinion. And likewise, on Matzei Shabbos, one could already instruct a non-Jew to do malacha for him, even 10 minutes after Shabbos, because again, for the Gaonim, that's already 13, no longer 13 and a half minutes, 9 and something is already nightfall for their purposes. So when we're talking about rabbinical matters, he says we could take the leniencies of the Gaonim and Rabbeinu Tam at the beginning of Shabbos and the end of Shabbos for instructing a non-Jew. Also, we mentioned Avelos. We mentioned morning practices. So the way to start Avelos, to start the 7 days of Shiva, is that I've instructed this a few times when it was a little bit close, when they weren't going to make it home before Shkia. I said, sit at the at the funeral house, the administrative office, sit down for a few minutes, take off your shoes, be nohe, conduct yourself in Avelis. That way you can already count this as day one of Shiva. But let's say someone played it close to nightfall. So he says, as long as they do it within 40 minutes after sunset, that's still okay. Why? Because when it comes to laws of Avelos, halacha kedivrei hamekel. This is a general principle in the laws of mourning that we adopt lenient opinions. That's a general principle. So we can use Rabbeinu Tam, who says that up until 40 minutes, relatively speaking, it is still daytime. Notice how when he reduces 72 to 50 minutes, that's not just a leniency, it's a stringency also. Because if we went with 72 fixed minutes, really, according to this thinking, I should have 58.5 minutes after sunset if I'm using Rabbeinu Tam, who says it's still daytime. So the 50 minutes, even though I'm thinking like, oh, I could, go put my pizza in the oven now that Shabbos is over, but for other purposes, constricting it down to 50 minutes instead of 72 could also be a stringency as well. Then bris milah also, right? We're going through all the life cycle over here. A circumcision, also important to determine when is day 7. Well, it depends when was the baby born? If the baby was born after Shkia, so what should we do? So this is where it gets really, to me, like really conceptually fascinating. He employs what we call a sveik sveika. As the name suggests, suffix means doubt. Sveik sveika is a double doubt. What are the two doubts over here? Now, basically, when you have a double doubt, you could get a very good leniency out of it. Doubt number 1 is what we call a suffix bimitzias. Dude, I think you brought this up last week, right? So this is where we bring it back in. One is that twilight is fundamentally, categorically, maybe day, maybe night, right? I thought you.
Yes.
Okay, I'm going to explain it. Yes, good. And now I'm going to explain it. So that's doubt number 1. Twilight is inherently doubtful territory. Big question mark on twilight. Categorically, maybe day, maybe night. We leave it fundamentally unresolved. But then I have another doubt. Do I paskin like the Gaonim or like Rabbeinu Tam? Do I go with 3/4 of a mil, or do I have to wait until 3 mil and 1/4 of a mil until Shkia begins? So that itself is a doubt as well. So he says, let's combine both of these together. And he says as follows. He says that for a bris milah, we also can go until, he says, that up until 40 or so minutes, I'm basically according to Rabbeinu Tam, it is still daytime. And even according to the majority opinion, it might be daytime still, because for them it's twilight. So maybe I paskin like Rabbeinu Tam. And even if I don't paskin like Rabbeinu Tam, it's still fundamentally maybe day, maybe night. So he says, I feel a little uncomfortable saying you could then do the bris milah on Shabbos on this basis, but he says, Avol akol panim, elu harotzim lismoch al zeh af b'Shabbos ein limchos b'yanim. People are going to rely on it to do the bris milah on Shabbos. They already sent out the invitations. They made all the arrangements already. They paid the caterer. Then okay, go ahead and do it. Marsha, the example you gave for hefsek tahara, for mikvah purposes, for nida purposes, he says that. So this is where stringency comes in. Originally, that 3/4 of a mil, if you went with 72 minutes, 3/4 of a mil translates into 13.5 minutes. But because Ramosha held that no, 4 mil is actually 50 minutes, remember that puts 3/4 of a mil at 9 or so minutes. What? 3/4 of a mil. 3/4 of a mil would be 9 or so, 9.33, whatever the calculation was. So that means if a woman needs to do a bedika, check before Shkia begins to establish that as a hefsek tahara day to begin her counting of the 7 days, so then she has to get in before Shkia. But you only get grace period, not till 13.5, but till 9 minutes, basically. So notice how it becomes a stringency as well. Like we're like, yeah, Ramosha saved us on Motzei Shabbos, but for other things, it becomes a little stricter also. And then finally, the one we've all been waiting for, fast days, right? I go on my Zmanim and it has the different times. So I don't get it. Like Ramosha Feinstein, make up your minds already. What's this Ramosha Feinstein? If it's hard for you not to eat, and like who's I don't know. I'm like I'm starving at that point. It's hard. Yeah, sure. It's hard for me. I want to eat already. Then there's Ramosha Feinstein. If it's not too hard for you, if you could wait a few more minutes. So I don't get it. Like where do you pull these out of a hat from? Well, all based on everything we've been talking about. Final paragraph that I put from the tshuva over here. He says when it comes to the I should point out the minor fast days. This won't work for Yom Kippur because similar to Shabbos, we got to play it safe. But for the minor fast days, after 3 mili urivia, 3 1/4 mil, which translates to 41 minutes, one can already eat if it's rough for them. He says, ideally, you should wait the full 50 minutes, just like we would do at the end of Shabbos, at the end of Yom Kippur. But because it's midrabanan, if it's difficult, one could already eat after 41 minutes. Why? It's the same sveka. Because for the Godim, it's already nightfall. And for Rabbeinu Tam, now for him, it's his shkia, so maybe it's nightfall, maybe it's not. So it's a doubled out leniently. And that's how you get the 2 different times for Moshe Feinstein on the Zmanim when we're looking to figure out when the fast ends. So there's more to the tshuva that's not even on the. Can you believe it? There's even more to the tshuva that's not on the sheet over here. But as I said to myself, if I can somewhat intelligibly somehow attempt to explain this in somewhat of a clear way, dayenu. The good news, my friends, is I thought this was really cool, by the way, and I'm not even a numbers guy, but like once I finally figured out how to line everything, I'm like, oh, it actually the numbers work out. I got so excited. So next time we're gonna get into the fun stuff. Next time we're gonna look at the Satmar Rav, how he castigated people who did not hold the Rabbeinu Tam. We're gonna see next time we're gonna get all like the juicy, like more like the fighting, and then we'll actually talk about Zmanim on an airplane as well, which someone already asked me a question about that recently. Yeah, and the guys, and what if you're going like around a black hole where like time and space eventually inverse with each other, and somehow you're not crushed down at that point? But the speed of light can't escape the black hole. So, okay. The good news, guys, is that this is the most technical class I probably have and ever will give. So for a long time, I'll say.
I was just gonna say that when you go to weddings, they're usually so often if there's they'll either push off the
ksuba.
Right, till when it's written.
Yes, you can run into an issue with the ksuba
So
then.
they'll either rush to get it in before, or they'll say, no, we're gonna wait until after.
Yes.
They're very particular.
100%. That's you want the ksuba to be legitimate. All right. Wonderful learning. Thank you for coming out this late hour, my friends, and to Alan and Toby on the virtual. Good learning together. Good seeing you guys. All right. We do all the fun stuff next week in Mir Hashem. Take care, everybody. Again, this was fun, I hope.
I was reading it.